Hey, everybody. So, if you're hearing some weird sounds in the background, it's because just when I turned on the recording here, we kind of got hit by a legit thunderstorm. So, if you see this video, it means that I survived, and that's good. I think it's appropriate also because I'm going to be talking about crisis. So, here we go. But like I mentioned yesterday, I've been thinking a lot about my work on this channel, about how I can do it better. And one issue I've been thinking about lately, something I think I can improve on, is the way that I think about this whole idea of crisis. People often ask me in the comments or in private communications, what should we do about the issues that we're talking about here? And I think that's a really fair question. And I think it's grounded in a general sense of crisis, in a general sense that we've got to do something to get us out of this crisis. So I want to talk about that. First of all, I want to ask, are we in a crisis right now as a nation? And I'm just going to go ahead and say yes. I think we are. And I think we can dig into a few more questions to get at what I mean by this. Like, what's the shape of the crisis that we're in? Does this crisis demand that we act differently somehow from how we've acted in the past? How long do we think the crisis will last? Does the crisis look like it'll end soon, or is this our life now? And on a more very basic level, though, I think we need to ask, what do we even mean when we use the word crisis? So I want to start the discussion by saying that I have tended to avoid crisis language in my videos. Not entirely, because some hard things just have to be faced, but I try hard not to exaggerate the sense of crisis in any given moment. And some of that's just my optimistic nature, but it's also a learned pastoral trait. I just have a basic policy on this channel that I never want to use frightening language or ideas just to get people to listen or to build an audience. I don't want anyone to feel more frightened after listening to one of my videos unless I'm talking about something that's just legitimately frightening. But I do think that I have to get better at talking about the crisis that we are in. The thing is, some days I feel like Cassandra warning the people at Troy, "Alas for the day, alas for the city, I see her falling, and none will believe my words." I can relate to that, but I tend to talk more like Pollyanna. When you're hunting for the glad things, you sort of forget the other kind. But the thing is, they were both right. Cassandra and Pollyanna were both right. They both saw a side of reality that's true. The world will always be full of glad things, and there's always hope. But the Trojans should have realized that that horse wasn't one of those glad things, and they never should have brought that horse inside their city walls. So I think it's important to learn how to balance both of those perspectives. At least on this channel, I think that I need to be a little bit Cassandra and a little bit Pollyanna, because I think that accurately reflects reality. So there's that. We are in a crisis, I think, as a nation. But I think we make a mistake if we think of it as something that we have to fix immediately at all costs. I don't think that's possible, first of all, but I also don't think that it would be helpful. I think it all comes down, understanding this, to what we mean by the word crisis. If we mean that we're in a moment like when a deer runs across the road in front of our car, this is a Minnesota thing, and we've got to hit the brakes immediately. Like, sure, that's a quick, easily solved crisis, and we'll know how it turns out soon enough. But the original Greek word crisis meant something a little different from that. The main meaning was that the crisis was the moment in medicine when a patient's disease either took a turn for the better or the patient was about to die. But then the Greeks also used that word to describe the turning point in the plot of a play, or to describe a time in history when the future is getting determined. And this is what I think we're in right now, and where we're not sure what direction things are going to go. I think we are in a time of history when the future is being determined. But I don't think it's a precise moment. I think it's an era that we're in. And I think on some level, all of those meanings describe our nation right now, but especially that last one. And then in the Hebrew, we find a word, mashber, that they use the same way as we use crisis. But that word has the meaning of a birthing stool also. And I just think that's appropriate, the birthing stool, a place of crisis, where the result is hopefully going to be joyful, but where tragedy is also a possibility. And I think it's important to understand that that's where we're at right now as a country. We could go the direction of even more authoritarianism, for instance, or even fascism. And we're already seeing some really disturbing things happening, some terrible things that are real right now. And to me, that question is the shape of this crisis. The shape of this crisis is that the nation is deciding between an authoritarian, I would say a corrupt authoritarian version of the future, and a more democratic rule of law sort of version of the future. And the crisis, I think, is also all wrapped up in American Christianity. And we're going to have a lot better future if a whole bunch of Christians get a better understanding of their role in the world. So that's the sort of stuff I talk about on this channel, but I don't view it as a slam on the brakes before we hit the deer sort of a crisis. I view it more as a slow-moving fire that's consuming the country. And yeah, it is picking up speed lately, but we still have a lot of firefighting techniques that we can employ. But part of the crisis is that a lot of things have already been burned down. And we've got competing ideas about how to rebuild. The authoritarians, I mean, you look at Project 2025, it's very clear they know what they're doing. They lit the fire because they want to burn the system down and they want to rebuild it in their image. But this is where I think we need to do more than just react in the moment. If we just panic and think, this is the end, if we live in reaction, then we're missing an opportunity to do half the work that I think we're called to do. Some of us at least, I mean, we need people to be quick reaction force type people, but some of us at least need to be focused on how to rebuild in a better way. Donald Trump is going to be gone someday, and that's not going to solve the problems. There were aspects of our current system that didn't work for millions of people. And if we look at this time as a crisis in the sense of a moment in history when we get to determine a new direction, even if we don't know how it's going to turn out, we get to have a say in that. If we look at our time like that, then we've got an opportunity to make things better, not just to try to preserve what was. And I've got to admit that what I just said there about trying to make things better and not just trying to preserve what was, that represents a change in my own thinking. One of the things that made me a conservative back in the day was that I had a very high regard for the institutions of our government. I just did. I mean, a very high regard. And I wasn't all the way, I don't mean by the way people think there's a government solution to everything. It's not necessarily big government, but when you talk about the institutions like our system of justice and that sort of thing, I just hold in very high regard, especially I used to. And I wasn't all the way out on the edge of the spectrum where I thought of our Constitution as being like divinely inspired. I wasn't that far gone. But I had a very high level of respect for institutions. And honestly, I still do respect them. I've just learned from hard experience that I'm out, I put too much faith in those institutions in the past. I still do want to protect the institutions that are meant to protect us from corrupt leaders. I want to protect those. And I want to protect the institutions that are meant to help everyone to thrive. But what's different about where I'm coming from now in recent years is the realization that maybe even that last sentence I said isn't exactly right. I ended by saying, I want to protect the institutions that were meant to help everyone to thrive. And I'm just not as sure anymore as I used to be that most of our institutions, even our system of justice, were meant to help everyone to thrive. I'm not so sure of that anymore. So a conservative approach might be to look at the crisis in America and think, we have this great system, but it's been taken over by a bunch of dolts and wombats, and we just need to take it back from them. But I don't believe that quite as strongly as I used to. Because there were reasons that Trump was able to mobilize millions of disgruntled people. And even if I disagree with 95% of their concerns, they had real concerns. And there are weaknesses in our institutions and probably in our Constitution itself that allowed this to happen. So I don't want to waste this crisis by just working to return everything back to normal. So if that means I'm not a conservative anymore, that's fine. I don't really care what I am. I just want to find a way to preserve what's good and to improve what needs to be improved. And in many ways, that is a conservative viewpoint, but it's many people would say that's what they want to do. So this crisis, I think, gives us an opportunity to think about those things if we don't simply react all the time. It's been helpful for me to realize that this just is our life now, like it or not. This isn't going to go away with an election. And this isn't going to end when Donald Trump leaves the planet someday. I mean, if I live another 10 years or another 40 years, I think that this is the battle that's going to be waged in our churches and in our nation. The battle for truth, the battle for justice, the battle against cruelty in the name of God. And it's been helpful to realize that it's not a battle with a finish line. Resistance and rebuilding, those two things are becoming my lifestyle. Like, this is my life now. No one's going to ultimately win this battle once and for all, because it's not a battle that can finally be won once and for all. It's not a battle between good people and bad people, although, yeah, there are some reprehensible people in the Trump administration for sure. But this is a battle that's going to always exist on some level because human beings have dark, hidden places inside of us. Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote, "If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart?" So in a weird way, I find that comforting. Trump and his goons can do a lot of damage, but they're not going to ultimately be victorious, because that good part of human nature is never going to stop fighting back against that dark part of human nature. But we're also never going to get to some finish line where the darkness is entirely defeated either. The more that I learn about American history, the more whacked I see that we've been more often than not. So here we are, whacked again, but we've got to do what so many people have always done before us, just keep trying to make it better. The way that I do that, I plan to keep doing this, is to tell the truth, protect the vulnerable, work for justice. This is my life now. And I think for many of us, this is our life now. And I'm happy to be in that fight. So thanks for listening.